Hans Christian Andersen was a Danish author whose works you have definitely seen in one form or another, whether or not you're aware of that. His works include The Ugly Duckling, The Little Mermaid, and The Snow Queen, the last two of which were adapted into Disney films, The Little Mermaid becoming The Little Mermaid, and The Snow Queen ultimately served as inspiration for Disney's Frozen. But today, I want to talk about one of his lesser-known stories, The Little Match Girl. Although The Little Match Girl was adapted into a short film by Disney, I still feel like a lot of people aren't familiar with the story. The story follows the titular Little Match Girl, who is tasked by her father with selling a book of matches on the streets of Denmark on New Year's Eve. Unfortunately, the little girl is unsuccessful in doing so. She's too afraid to go home to her father empty-handed and fears that he's going to end up beating her, so she decides to stay out on the streets. She eventually huddles down in a snowy alleyway and slowly strikes the matches to keep herself warm. Each match ends up producing a very comforting vision for the little girl. Eventually, she ends up seeing her grandma in one of the visions, so she ends up striking the entire matchbook, that way she can keep that vision going. The story ultimately ends with the little girl freezing to death and later being discovered by bystanders. The bystanders noted that the girl had a smile on her face, and the girl ended up being brought to heaven by her grandmother. Now, like I said earlier, this story was adapted into a short film by Disney, and honestly, they didn't Disneyfy it all that much. There were some changes though. They changed the location of the story from Denmark to St. Petersburg, and two big changes are they got rid of the girl's father being abusive, and they didn't directly say that the little girl's grandmother was dead, although it was implied. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, what in the hell kind of story is that? And honestly, it's a sad story, and that's what it's meant to be. The point of the story was to try to bring attention to the plight of European children in the 19th century. But if we're being honest, even today, 180 years later, I think this story is still as relevant as ever. People of all ages are still suffering in the streets, so maybe this story can help inspire some empathy in others. But tell me, what are your thoughts on The Little Match Girl? I'd love to hear all about it in the comment section down below. And please be sure to follow along for more book and reading related content.